The Oregon Ducks are ready to take the Big Ten by storm. And more trouble for Michigan. Locked On Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman, coming up on 40 years as a sports talk show host. It's hard to believe, and a play-by-play announcer as well. But I want to thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, plus on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com and get started. All right. Oregon is here. Big Ten teams have to deal with it. Plus, more, as in Sherrone Moore, trouble at Michigan. And we'll have our top 10 observations from the weekend as well. These are good. These are really good. Hang on for that. But for now, let's talk the Oregon Ducks. Now that they're officially in the Big Ten, let's talk about how good they are and how much of a chance they will have to challenge an equally loaded Ohio State team for the Big Ten championship, and maybe more when it's all said and done. This team is on a roll, and they've been on a roll since even before Dan Lanning got there. They've won 10 or more games 4 of the last 5 years as Lanning goes into year 3. But Lanning has taken things up a notch. And the Ducks came razor close to having a completely different story coming into their Big Ten debut season. Their 2 losses in 2023 came to national runner-up Washington by a field goal both times. They were that close. And the first time they passed on 3 makeable field goals, twice at the goal line. Came up empty. Certainly would have made a difference in the game. Of course, in the rematch, they blew a lead to Washington in the Pac-12 championship game. It could be argued by some that Oregon was actually the better team on the field last year, but they didn't have anything to show for it when the scoreboard was all done in those Washington games. The rest of 2023, if you didn't watch Ducks football, you missed out. They blew people out. Their margin of victory was like over 30 points and 250 yards a game every single game. In fact, they scored 30 or more points in 14 straight games. That streak is still going. That leads all FBS schools. They're going to bring that to the Big Ten. Will Stein is entering his second season as the offensive coordinator. By the way, he was a quarterback at Louisville back in the day. So he's a good fit, just great fit for all these quarterbacks that are coming through Oregon here as of late. Dan Lanning, of course, comes from the Georgia coaching tree. They know how to win games. You know, in 2 quick years, Lanning has the Ducks on a national stage. And, of course, he capped it off with a 12-win season last season. Everything's all the rage up there. Everybody's not only excited about Oregon football, they're excited about Oregon football now in the Big Ten. And Lanning, he's getting it done on the field. He's getting it done in recruiting back-to-back years. He's had a top 10 recruiting class. He's had a top 10 transfer portal class every year. He's just infusing Eugene with talent, just at all angles, just putting it all together. You know, Lanning and Will Stein, the offensive coordinator that we mentioned, you know, they possibly had the best offense in college football last season. They had Bo Nix at quarterback. And Bo Nix wasn't special at Auburn, but then he went over to Oregon and transferred there, and he was just a pass completion machine. He had great career stats. He made 61 career starts. He completed almost 80% of his passes last year, 77.4, if you want to be a stickler about it. Those marks are NCAA records. He received Heisman consideration, and he was the final Pac-12 offensive player of the year as the league folded. Somebody always have that. Now he's gone. He was a first-round pick by Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos. But you know what? No problem. Some teams would panic losing a quarterback that was worthy of a first-round pick in the NFL draft. Not Oregon. No problem. Dan Lanning and company, they landed not one, but two solid quarterbacks. By the way, they got another one coming. We're going to talk later on about recruiting. Well, they got two solid quarterbacks in the transfer portal, former Oklahoma starter Dillon Gabriel and former five-star Dante Moore coming from Chip Kelly's system at UCLA. Gabriel will be the starter here, no doubt about that, based on his experience. In fact, at Oklahoma, he threw for over 3,600 yards, 30 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions. He takes care of the ball, and he can make things happen. By the way, going into his 6th year, he's got 49 starts. I told you how many starts Bo Nix had at 61. He could surpass that if he stays healthy, and will have started more games than anybody else in the history of college football. 125 touchdowns over his career, and 15,925 total yards. All three of those stats, those number one in FBS. So all fantastic. They're loaded coming in here. Given that he'll be operating more of a talented offense than the team he had at Oklahoma, this team could go far, not just in the Big Ten, but nationally. And a lot of people are already starting to fill out their Heisman votes already with this kid. The only downside for Oregon is he only has 1 year of eligibility left. It's too bad. But then Dante Moore is sitting there ready to go. He's just a sophomore. And like I told you, they got more in the pipeline. I'll tell you about that kid in a minute. But, last year's top rusher and top receiver, they're gone. But it's really not a problem. You can look for Jordan James to carry the ground load this year. Tez Johnson, wide receiver, managed almost 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns, despite being the number 2 option on offense. He's back this year after an incredible year last year. And he's going to lead a pretty deep wide receiver room in addition to him. So they've done some stellar recruiting and success of the transfer portal. They're just as loaded at wide receiver. This is a great wide receiver room. 3 starters return to the offensive line, a line that only allowed a sack on less than 1% of their 2023 passing plays. They did lose their awesome center in Jackson Powers Johnson. He was picked by the Raiders in the draft. But this line is good enough. It should compete for the Joe Moore Award for the best line in the country that either Washington or Michigan has won the last 3 years. Washington won it last year. Michigan won it the 2 previous years, by the way. So the offense is loaded. Nobody's worried about it. Great. They're ready to compete in the Big Ten. But to compete in the Big Ten, you better have some defense. Again, no problem. No problem. While everybody was pointing out, us included, that Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State and their defenses were ranked 1, 2, 3 nationally, not just in the Big Ten, but nationally. Those were the top 3 defenses in the country. Oregon's defense was 9th in points allowed. So they ranked nationally. They're ready to go. They are built like a Big Ten team. They're ready to go. Got defensive coordinator Tosh Lapoy coming in for his 3rd season. He said last year was last year. We don't even think about it anymore. He says very complimentary things about Dan Lanning, says it helps him become a better defensive coordinator. And while Lanning has ties to Georgia, Lapoy has ties to Alabama, coached with Nick Saban for 5 years, says that was incredibly valuable to him. Of course it would be. Their front 7 on the defense has 11 blue chip kids. Not the whole defense, just the front 7 has 11 blue chip kids. And all 11 starters were 4 or 5-star recruits or a top 100 transfer in the portal. Loaded from front to middle to the back of this defense. Remember at the top when I said Dan Lanning was killing it with recruiting and transfer portal recruiting? This is what I'm talking about. This is a pretty solid roster from top to bottom. Linebackers, you got Jeffrey Bassa, who's like a coach on the field, just strong presence on the football field. Justin Jacobs, who was from Iowa. Mateo Ugalele, very high, energetic. By the way, sacked his brother once last year. His brother's now quarterback at Florida State. Played 300 snaps last year. Now just going into his sophomore season. So he's got a lot of experience. He's just learning how to play. And his job is to get to the quarterback. I heard him in an interview. He said, look, everybody looks at sacks. Sacks are great, but you do almost just as much damage by disrupting the quarterbacks. So that's his mindset. In the secondary, you got Jabbar Muhammad, who's a great story because he came over from Washington. Not too many kids leave Washington to go to Oregon. Kind of rivals, right? But he said, when he was looking to move, he just put his blinders on. Didn't worry about all the noise or what people would think. He says, you know what? Oregon's the best spot for me. So that's how he comes over. You got 4-star transfer Cam Alexander from UTSA, and Jillo Florence is at corner as well. Kobe Savage comes in from Kansas State to help out at safety and keep an eye on top 100 true freshman Aaron Flowers. Aaron Flowers, by the way, turned some heads at spring football. Keep an eye on that kid. Dan Lanning told the Big Ten Network that Oregon just checks all the boxes for him and his family. He's happy, everything, loves everything. You know, he didn't even sniff when Alabama was looking for a head coach. So I'm not interested. Staying here at Oregon. I'm happy. All is good. I want to make a splash in the Big Ten. He also has an interesting style. Look, I know head coaches try and delegate and they don't get involved or this or that. He says it's important for him to get involved in all the position rooms. And he learned a long time ago that coming up with the best scheme doesn't make you a winner, but it's having the relationship with all the kids. He works really hard on doing that. Loves the passion of the fans at Autzen Stadium. And he's also looking forward to seeing some of the other venues in the Big Ten as well. So that'll be awesome. The Ducks football team, of course, opens August 31st. They're hosting Idaho. Their first head-to-head Big Ten matchup is UCLA, ironically, in the Rose Bowl, September 28th. But the biggest game of the year will be October 12th at Autzen Stadium against Ohio State. So, and let's not forget, they also have a November 2nd date at the Big House against Michigan. So it's all great. If you're new to us, if you like what you see, if you've been here every day and you haven't yet subscribed, click it. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. You just click the button and it allows you and me to interact every day. And you can follow Locked On Big Ten for free wherever you get your podcast. That way, you get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it becomes available each and every day. And don't forget our website where you can get some Oregon shirts, hats, T-shirts, pennants, in addition to all of our podcasts, grouped by school and team there as well. All right there on the website, talkbig10, 10.com. So we got all that for you here and appreciate you to subscribe. And coming up, we're going to talk about Michigan. They're in the news. It's not good. It's more of the Spygate stuff and Sherrone Moore. We'll get to that, plus a little more Oregon recruiting news. It's all right here in 1 minute on Locked On Big Ten. Passion and drive and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, everything you think of. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts. For your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and all the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. I want to thank you for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen every day, especially you everydayers out there. Meanwhile, be sure to subscribe and also check out our website, talkbig10.com. Also, for a second listen, enjoy the Locked On College Football Podcast. Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussion on the upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, including conference realignment, transfer portal news, NIL, all that stuff, the new expanded playoffs. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, before we get to the Michigan stuff, some more good news for Oregon, since we were talking about Oregon and the recruiting department. They continue to tear it up. They have landed 2025 class 5-star defensive back Trey McNutt from Shaker Heights, Ohio. He was considering A&M, USC, Ohio State, and Florida. How did Ohio State let this kid get out of the state? I don't know. Maybe they didn't have room for him. He said he really bonded with the staff and the culture in Eugene. And as the Ducks go from Bo Nix to Dillon Gabriel, they also look ahead to the quarterback class of 2026. And they received a commitment from blue chipper Jonas Williams. So 2 pieces of good news for the Oregon Ducks. Williams picks the Ducks over Alabama, LSU, and Ohio State. Seems like the same schools going up the same guys, obviously. He really liked the Ducks. He really liked Will Stein at the OC. He said Oregon has been a dream of his for some time. So good job to close that deal. All right. Last week, we told you, some of you Michigan fans get really offended by this, but this is out there. We told you that a notice of allegations is coming at Michigan, and it's part of Spygate. ESPN is reporting that new head coach Sherrone Moore and 6 others allegedly violated NCAA rules in a draft of that notice of allegations that they got a hold of. Now, the draft, I'm told, as it is now, can still change before it's going to get released, whatever that is. We feel like it's pending. It's coming. But it states, allegedly, that Moore could be hit with a very serious show cause penalty and a possible suspension for allegedly deleting a thread of 52 text messages with former staffer Connor Stalions in October of 2023. He was, of course, at the center of the whole Spygate scandal. And in October of 2023, when all these texts disappeared, that was when the story was breaking. If that's true, that could be tough for Sherrone Moore. Plus, it could be extra tough. He could be accused of being a multiple offender. Because you may recall, he was also suspended 1 game, the first game of the season last year. He was part of Jim Harbaugh's 3-game suspension. Moore was out for that first game, all part of the Burgergate scandal, where they were accused of visiting recruits during a non-visit period during the COVID pandemic. The NCAA draft also reportedly states that the NCAA has evidence that Connor Stalions was indeed that mystery person on the Central Michigan sideline in the season opener at Michigan State last year. And he was wearing Central Michigan coaching gear and everything. We all thought it was him. It looked like him. We've talked about it for several months, almost a year. NCAA thinks it was him. Michigan claims to be helping and cooperating with the NCAA, but this NCAA draft also suggests that Stalions has not been so cooperative. He's expected to give his side of the story in a Netflix special later on this month. Maybe he's holding out for that because, I don't know, maybe he got paid. Stay tuned. This is shaping up to be big. We started bringing this news to you last week. Here are a few more details. So we'll see when it comes out. There may be more on this as soon as tomorrow. So stay tuned to Locked On Big Ten. Hey, since we're talking about recruiting just a minute ago, let's jump into Minnesota for a second. Head coach PJ Fleck is telling everybody he feels like the Gophers class of 2024 is the best he's ever had. It's his 8th class there. He admits he wasn't the highest bidder when it came to nil, going out and buying players, however you want to phrase it. He feels it's important to go after the right kind of players, row the boat guys up there that fit in with him up there at Minnesota. He's just looking for best fit guys. It's the same thing that Greg Schiano says at Rutgers. These coaches that maybe aren't top tier, they got to work harder and find fit because maybe they can't get the 5-star. So they got to get the fit guy they can develop. Nothing wrong with that. Just multiple coaches are saying it and talking about it. And so he says, hey, good fit might sound a little cliche, but with everything going on, he still gets to choose the players that he wants and they get to choose him as well. But if you want to compare recruiting services, Fleck's class of 2024 ranked near the top 30 nationally, which statistically is his best recruiting class in his Gopher tenure. And it's also true that he's landed a number of 4-stars on both sides of the ball. He's also getting coveted transfers in the portal, like Jackson Howard, edge rusher, former Georgia Bulldog receiver Tyler Williams, and, of course, the most interesting of the bunch, New Hampshire quarterback Max Brosmer. Now, maybe the Gophers could be one of those surprise teams in the Big Ten this year. I know they've got a bunch of good defensive players. Their running backs are very good. Their offensive line is pretty good. They've got a really good number 1 receiver. So a lot will depend on Brosmer and whether he can adjust to the level of play, jumping from a small school like New Hampshire, playing at a Power 4 in the Big Ten at Minnesota. It's a lot to ask. But everyone at Minnesota seems pretty excited about this kid, so we'll see how he does. when he plays. All right. You know what we do? We always have features here on Locked On Big Ten. On Mondays, we always like to have our top 10 Big Ten observations from the weekend. This is a good list. It's a really good list. That's all coming up next right here on Locked On Big Ten. We love sports all times throughout the year, especially the summertime. Focus on some baseball. We got college football right around the corner. FanDuel helps you participate in sports, and as exciting as they are, they're even better with FanDuel. All you have to do is open up the app, dream up any bets when you're in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of what remains of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. In fact, coming up here on Monday, take the Reds over the Marlins, the Guardians over the Diamondbacks, and the Twins over the Cubs. So take the over 9.5 runs on Red Sox versus Royals on that Monday night action. Again, FanDuel, go to FanDuel.com. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, let's do this. I'm going to take a look at our Monday feature, and we'll go full screen on it for you if you're audio only. It is our Big Ten, our top 10 Big Ten observations from the weekend. There's a lot of good stuff here that we will get to. I'm going to put it on screen. And all right, we're going to start it off. Now, why might I be mentioning Penn State's Jess Mruzik? Because she made the all Big Ten season preseason. Volleyball rankings are coming out. Also, so a shout out to her. She was one of 3 unanimous players that were picked. We also have Nebraska's Lexi Rodriguez. She was the 2023 Defensive Player of the Year. She was a unanimous pick. And more from Nebraska, Merritt Beeson is on there. She was a unanimous preseason all-conference pick as well. And we'll just keep the theme going with Nebraska volleyball in general because they were picked to win the Big Ten. Number 1 in the preseason poll. So volleyball season is coming. Meanwhile, another shout out, 42 Olympians who went to Michigan or go to Michigan. That's great. We talk about how we always, we focus a lot on football and basketball here on this podcast, all those great Olympic sports that our Big Ten schools have, and 42 of them from Michigan. An even bigger number, 58 of them from USC. So there we have. We got 4 more left here of our top 10 observations for the Big Ten over the weekend. At number 4, Big Ten, the Big Ten on Twitter or X did a great job of welcoming the new teams last Friday. A lot of great stuff on Twitter. We retweeted a lot of that out here on Talk Big Ten as well. And I'm sure we'll see some of those tomorrow on Tuesday tweets, right? Big Ten Network has a great welcome series for all the new teams. It's a half-hour production, behind the scenes, interviews and stuff from USC, UCLA, and Oregon and Washington. It's good stuff, good quality stuff. Go check that out. It's airing repeatedly on the Big Ten Network. Number 2, just Big Ten expansion. How excited were we all to welcome USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington on Friday? It was just Friday had a different vibe to it, didn't it? Just felt really, really cool that day. We're growing to 18 teams. And then that leads us to number 1. This is the number 1 coolest top 10 thing we saw on the weekend. The Big Ten new maps commercial. You know, the overhead shot of going from coast to coast with all the schools and the campuses, and the new commercial came out and it added the teams as well. So that's all fantastic. They did a really, really good job on all that. It's flawless. It's even better than the one, even very similar to the one that was last year, but it was outstanding. And we really, really enjoyed it. Right down to the Big Ten Network satellite in the upper right-hand corner on the last shot, over the entire land, over America, coast to coast, West Coast to East Coast, from Mexico to Canada, the Big Ten. Great. The Maps commercial was fantastic. That was the top thing I saw over the weekend. I hope you enjoyed that too. If you haven't seen it, go look for it. It's out there. All right, so lots going on. Many ways for you to interact with us, especially if you're brand new from the West Coast, checking us out. You can interact with us on Twitter or X at Talk Big Ten. That's the number 10. Comments on YouTube are always welcome. Love hearing from you West Coasters as well. You guys have been great on that. And then don't forget our website, talkbig10number10.com. All of our podcasts go there. They're chronological. As soon as this one's done, it'll be there. We also group them by schools. If like today, we focus a lot on Oregon. This will go under the Oregon file. You Oregon Duck fans can find it. As the week goes on, we're going to focus heavily on Washington and, of course, the Southern California schools, and keep an eye on what's going on with this Michigan story. This is a big deal. So we'll keep an eye on it for you. We'll have it all right here. Tell your friends about us. If you know a family member or a friend who's a Big Ten alum, let them know we're out here every day. And all of you, subscribe as we make our push to 10,000 subscriptions before the start of the season. It's free. And you can follow this podcast right now on your favorite podcast app, and you get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. And I always invite you to watch another episode of Locked On Big Ten when you're done. You find them at the website. And for another listen, a second listen, if you will, you can enjoy Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin. He gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussion of the upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, including realignment, transfer portal, NIL, expanded playoffs. Everything's going on. Busy time in college football. Locked On College Football available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That'll do it. I know we're going to have another big week of news here in the Big Ten. We got you covered right here. Thank you for your time today, and I can't wait till we talk again. For Locked On Big Ten, I'm Craig Sheeman. Talk to you next time.